Hey, folks, welcome back to On the Border with Sheriff Mark Lamb, retired sheriff out of Pinal County, Arizona. Got a good friend with me and a great sheriff, Sheriff Kieran Donahue from Canyon County, Idaho. He is, I'm not going to be able to go through all your accomplishments, Sheriff, but he's been the past president of the Idaho Sheriff's Association, Sheriff of the Year from Western States in 2016. Third term? Fourth term.
Yeah.
He was the immediate past president of the National Sheriff's Association. And honestly, I could go on and on with all of his accomplishments, but more than anything, this is about as real of a man as you can get. And probably, I think, the most impressive thing that he and his wife, Jeannie, have been able to do is the Man Up Crusade, dealing with domestic violence, which is plaguing this country. And they've taken it upon themselves to be part of the solution, and we appreciate it. I know from the sheriffs, all of us sheriffs know it, support it, and thank you for doing it. So,
Well, that's very kind of you, and the accolades for you go much longer term than mine, which is great.
I was impressed by yours. They were great.
And you know that, and just speaking of Jeannie and what she's accomplished with the Man Up Crusade over the last 13 years, or what it was, I think it's the 13th year now, and she does it through heart, conviction, and prayer, and that she believes in the mission, and I do too. And when I first brought it to her, she's like, yeah, let's do this. I said, God's compelling us, and got to do our part. And so I think that this just really, sheriffs like yourself, just, the status of what you accomplished as a sheriff, what you continue to establish as a past sheriff, well, having you people behind us, the Western State Sheriff's Association, of course, the ambassadors throughout this nation as sheriffs, that's how we're going to stop that issue.
I 100% agree. And we are that front line, the last line. We're the front line and we're the last.
Yes, we are.
We talk about the last line, and as this National Sheriff's Association president, you had a unique term, because 6 months of your term was under President Biden and their administration, and 6 months was under this administration.
Yeah.
And the border, we're here in Arizona for the Southwest Border Coalition Conference with all the border sheriffs and many other sheriffs from all over, because it's affected all of us.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a couple of questions. But first, I want to talk to you. What was it like being on that national position?
Yeah.
And how was it the previous 6 months or the last 6 months? What was the border issue like? What was it like dealing with law enforcement issues? And then versus what we gotten out?
What a contradiction of terms, right?
Literally.
To say the least.
Yeah.
But we were fighting prior to becoming the president. I served a year and a half as the first vice president. So I really got fields of President Biden and his administration and lack thereof.
I'm sorry about that.
Right?
By the way.
All of us. And as much as he was a problem and Harris was a problem, the fact that Secretary Mayorkas completely and continuously and to this day lied to the American people, lied to the world about this border issue. And yes, we're down here in the South and the Southwest border issue, but we have nearly 6,000 miles on the northern border.
Which I went to, and there's nothing.
There's nothing up there.
Yeah.
And coastal regions. And so my first 6 months of my presidency, I too was touring the northern border and the southern and lecturing across the country and saying, look, we've got to do something. And it was literally, people use the cliche that it was crickets. It was less than crickets. They wouldn't even answer a letter. They wouldn't answer a phone call. I'm the president of the National Sheriff's Association. You won't even talk to us.
And if you tried to bug spray for those crickets, they would come out.
Oh, they would absolutely come.
I mean, we charge money. I know we talked about that before here in my county, because there's a state code that says that it specifically dealing with human trafficking, aiding and abetting in human trafficking, that said that or any public servant who omission of their duty by a public servant.
Yeah.
And so we saw that, we charged it. Unfortunately, my county attorney didn't take it, but you were dealing with it from having to manage this national position. I thought you did a great job, by the way.
Well, I appreciate that. It's a hard job. It's not an easy job to take on that role as the president and represent our 3,081 sheriffs in this country, because we represent them all. But I felt, again, compelled by God to take on that challenge. I felt God pushing me all along the way and guiding me. And it was for the sheriffs. It was for really save our nation, because I really felt that I still feel that we're in this tipping point, right? And when I look back at that, the time under the Biden administration as the president, or first vice president, and then switching into high gear in January of this year, it like someone turned on a faucet and the lights came on. And there was if we needed a meeting at the White House, we had a meeting at the White House. If I had a meeting with Stephen Miller, we had a meeting with Stephen Miller, and at their invitation. What like we had to reach out, and the president, as you know, we met at the Oval Office a few months back, prior to me ending my reign, and his commitment to us was powerful.
Yeah.
And it still is, right? And that's the big contrast difference.
Huge contrast.
And he said, we asked him prior to the election, I asked him in a letter, I asked both campaigns, will you declare the cartels as terrorist organizations? He said, yes, I will. I'll do it when I become president. He did it the first day. And these other people wouldn't even acknowledge it. Look what they've done, the damage. There will be possibly decades or generations trying to fix. So I couldn't be happier to have Mr. Trump in office, and Tom Homan, who we saw today, and I had a private meeting with him.
He's always great, by the way.
He's always great, but he's a true champion, a patriot, and the defender of our country. So, long-winded answer to your question, but I mean,
That was perfect.
It was so important to be there, and I'm blessed that I got to spend my last 6 months of my presidency with that man in the White House.
Well, I thought you were the right person for the job. And you mentioned the word palpable. I mean, I remember during the first Trump administration, I was the sheriff, and I was invited, and I know you were there many of those times. I went to the White House 10 times for different things.
Yeah.
And yet, in this administration, 0 under the last administration, immediately President Trump understood the importance of getting back to having law enforcement as part of it and being partners. I want to shift gears to home state of Idaho, because we talked briefly about the northern border. And I think a lot of people we talk border, we think southern border.
Yeah, we do.
And even though the numbers are significantly less, I'm concerned with who comes across the top, because I don't think the average person understands that the majority of the people on the terrorist watch list that we've caught over the last 4 years were caught at the northern border.
That's a real problem there. And again, you've got nearly 6,000 miles of porousness, border, waterways, the Great Lakes, all this going into the northeastern side, come back across from the Dakotas and Montana and Idaho, where I'm from, and our border, and Washington, and what was happening for many years under, again, the past administration, and really kind of not paying attention by Canada. Those international visas, they were getting them up to Vancouver on the west and Montreal on the east. And then the cartels would meet them because they could legally fly to those two destinations. Then the cartels did it from there. I've been up there, 5 years ago, I was up there lecturing with Canada, with the RCMP. And I said, you're 10 years behind right now. You've got to do something. And now we're really seeing a push by the Prime Minister and others to say, maybe we need to address this. It's incredibly forced, and it's incredibly lacking in manpower, not just from Customs and Border Protection, which was put on hold, as we all know, during the Biden administration. Now, how do you rebuild that, right? And Mr. Trump and Mr. Holman Todd Hines are trying to get people in place. We're woefully behind.
Way behind.
There it comes back, again, as it all often does, is the sheriffs. The sheriffs will be holding that line as those reinforcements are getting up to them, right? All across that 6,000 miles. I've met with sheriffs from east to west, literally traveled to it myself. The sovereign lands attached to the northern border, similar to the southern border. That is it's a great ground for the cartels to infiltrate.
And they take advantage.
And they exploit it. And so we do have a real challenge. And, obviously we've talked a lot with Mr. Holman about that. We talked with the president about that. They're very committed to addressing this. It's going to take a little bit of time. As we're now catching our breath in the south, we've got to shift and correct things in the north.
Yeah. I noticed that. I was out in Maine, and I finally had a chance to actually see the northern border. And literally, the grass was cut on one side, and the wheat wood and the barley was longer, and that was the dividing. There was nothing else. And a lot of those communities up there where we were Amish communities. So, I mean, these are just very different dynamics than what we're used to dealing with down here. But the problem was the same. The drugs, the human trafficking, people that don't love America coming across and harming us. And like you said, this was by, I feel, intentional.
Oh, yes.
By Mayorkas and by the last administration, the NGO money that was coming in.
It's unbelievable.
They made our jobs as sheriffs so different.
So difficult. And, with Mayorkas, and I called him out on national television, on Fox broadcast as the president. I said he needs to be indicted for treason against this country. And I still stand by that. You stand by that. You charging him in your county alone. The damage, and there's no consequence.
No,
there's no consequence. I just can't fathom that we have no consequence against people like that for what they've done.
They would do it to us.
They would do it to us.
Yeah.
We hear about, Tom Holman speaking this morning about the 100,000 children. They've recovered 24,000, in the last X number of months. But people that they just don't think about that and the damage. And I am totally like Mr. Holman. I understand wanting to come and have a better life. But there's a process. We're a nation of laws, and we have to stand by that. And we can get there, but we all got to do it together. And in the meantime, the sheriffs and the CBP, and we're going to hold that line.
We
got to have America come together and help do it together. And will we agree on everything? No, we're not going to agree. But we have to agree to deliberate and to come into the room and say, we've got to see all points of this, and how do we do the best job that we can?
That's very well said. And even to the sheriff's point, we're sheriffs, but we all come from different communities, different political backgrounds. But in the end, our goal is to protect our communities. And we see what our federal partners are going through right now, where they're just trying to do the job that Congress said, we want you to do this job. And Tom Holman talked about that today. And it's sad that there are people that are actually trying to impede them from doing the job. If they don't like what Congress said, then they should be angry at Congress.
They should. And the thing is, as he said, Congress, you enacted these laws. We are mandated to enforce these laws, whether it's from the state perspective of a legislative body, but federal, CBP, ATF, DEA, FBI, they're mandated federally to enforce the laws that you put on the books. And then you get mad because they're enforcing the laws that you put on the books.
And they bag them and they call them the Gestapo.
Right.
They call them
it's like, how you're the enemy at that point. And like you and I running for election, if you don't like what Congress is doing, unelect them.
Yes.
If you don't like what the sheriff's doing, you can unelect him or her. That's the democracy and republic that we live in.
But the definition of insanity is continuing to elect the same people, except your sheriff, elect us again. But continuing to elect the same people that are screwing it up on a national level and then expecting a different result. Just one more thing to the collaboration. We talk about working together, and this is why it's so important. And there are states that are trying to draw a line and say you can't work with your federal partners. Our federal partners' success on the border has a direct impact on us and local law enforcement, because the last time I checked, and I'm sure it's the same in Idaho, when somebody dies of a fentanyl poisoning, the federal government's nowhere to be found. When somebody is being assaulted by somebody who came into this country illegally, the federal government is nowhere to be found. Those are messes that we clean up as sheriffs and local law enforcement. And I would much rather be a help to my partners on the border, so that they can do the best they can to stop it, so that it ultimately alleviates some of the pressure. So
it doesn't come to our people that we're sworn to protect and to serve. And then those that are unfortunately affected by criminality, they didn't ask to be victims.
Right.
But then we take that role on. We pledged our life to do that, to take that role and protect them. But wouldn't it be better if we, like domestic violence, that we didn't have it in the first place?
Right.
That we didn't have the need for all these jails and all these situations. It'd be so much better. And is that a fallacy? Probably in the long term. But we can do so much better as a society. And it does take all of us as a society to correct these. And Congress, we do start with you. And the president, follow his lead. You don't have to agree with everything he does. I don't agree with everything he does or says. But that's how it's built. He wouldn't agree with everything I do or say.
But in the end, we're trying to do what's right by the people.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going to always agree with us either. And I know that you've learned it all throughout your career, and especially as the NSA president, the balance that exists and being able to find common ground. And I think we've lost that as a society in this country too. And I think it's really important for, again, like Sheriff Donahue, who still understand the importance of that balance, to have those types of people leading. I want to touch on a real personal nerve. because I went through it. Somebody, they weren't here illegally, but somebody that hit and killed my son and my granddaughter,
Yes.
my daughter-in-law. And for those people that don't know, your family suffered it, but it was somebody who was here illegally and actually killed one of your nephews.
Yeah.
How's your family process?
You never really, like yours is so much more personal, but it's personal because you never get over it. And I had to claim the body. I didn't want them to have to deal with it. I had to go through that. Glad to do it, but it shouldn't have happened.
It was preventable.
It was preventable as a young man. It was preventable. And so how can we not take that snapshot in time and say, what if this was your family? What if that was your family? Would you change? Would you do something different? I hope so. And maybe some of them wouldn't. I hope they would. But it affects that family. You don't get to come back.
You never recover. It's all, you're never the same.
And you personally have felt that the loss, which is immeasurable. And so I'm sorry for you. I've always often said that to you. I
appreciate you sharing that.
It's
a very personal story. Yeah. But part of the reason I wanted the sheriff to share that is because there are a lot of family members that live within our communities across this country who have been victimized. But it happens every day in our communities. The sheriff wasn't immune from it in his family. While I'm pretty sure that the family above the guy who killed my kids were not probably born here in this country.
Right.
It's an impact. And I know the sheriff feels the way I do. And this is why so many sheriffs we're so focused on trying to protect our communities and our citizens, because we can prevent some of these things, and we should prevent some of these things. And I don't think it's wrong to expect our government to do their job to prevent these things.
Without question. That's very well said on your part. We have a responsibility as a society governed by laws. When we started this country, we broke off from Europe, from Great Britain, to have that independence, think for ourselves, and be responsible, and do it. Don't just keep your hand out. Put a hand out there and help us fight this, and help us correct the wrongs, and help us prevent these horrific criminal tragedies to people who are completely innocent.
Right.
And they don't deserve that. And I don't see how America doesn't understand that. I hope people that are watching this do. And I hope you reach out to your congressmen, your senators, your state legislators, and demand they get in the battle. They get in the fight. Because make no mistake, Mark, we're at war. We're at war with the cartels. We're at war with China. We're at war with the terrorists. And this can all be taken from us if we don't stand in correct.
And we're at war with evil.
Yes, we are.
For evil to prevail, all it takes is for good men to do nothing.
That's exactly right.
And we're glad to have men like you on the front lines. And not only that, assuming, folks, there is no extra pay for being the president of the National Sheriff's Association or the Idaho Sheriff's Association or Western State Sheriffs. There is no extra pay. What there is extra heartache and a heartburn.
Yeah.
And we just appreciate you taking it on. And I thought you did a really excellent job on a national level. And you were at a time where we were dealing with probably the biggest crisis for our communities, and that was that open border crisis.
Yeah.
And the fentanyl crisis, and the cocaine and the marijuana and the victimization of Americans. And how do you see it, just before we wrap up, kind of what do you see as maybe some of the challenge we're facing, and then how do you see where the direction we're going right now?
Well, I think the challenges are real in terms of we do. China wants your country. China does whatever they can. You've got the Sinaloa cartel, the Jalisco New Generation cartel. These challenges are real. They're embedded throughout America, throughout over 100 countries that are part of this problem, that the enemies continue to face us. You've got the coastal regions. These things are massive. And so there's the military's involved. Obviously, we need them to be, the Coast Guard, the Navy, on that side of things. But then our international relations, there's challenges there with the Prime Minister of Canada, with some of these other countries, especially in Mexico. That president, she's trying. I'll give her that. She's trying. But she's in a very precarious position and situation. So diplomatically, that's a challenge, right? Where Mr. Trump wants to do certain things, there's probably some limitations within reason. And then as a society, the overdose epidemic, you have 100,000 people a year. That means we're at war. They're killing us and they're taking 100,000 people out a year, right? That's a lot.
Which is more than any terrorist organization has ever done.
Ever done. So you've got
They've
that.
managed to do that.
And so we need to embody that. And then we're the other side of it, what have we got? Well, with this president, he's a no holds barred president. He's like, we're taking America back. We're putting our enemies back on their heels.
I love it.
He's going after them. He's not making apology or excuse. And he's doing it for all the right reasons. And
Peace through strength.
peace through strength. And if we have that strength, we will have peace. And he's making them be held accountable. And that's what he needed to do. So we have some light at the end of the tunnel. But again, that tunnel can close if we're not careful. So I think we just have to be vigilant and again, unity. And again, you're fighting evil. We are fighting evil, and we have to take it back.
Well, these guys have been very patient with us. They're getting setting up for lunch here. And Sheriff, we just appreciate it. You can see why this guy has been the Sheriff of the Year, why he is esteemed as probably one of the most respected sheriffs in this country, and leading the way up there in Idaho. And we just appreciate everything. Tell everybody where they can go and help Man Up Crusade or follow you.
I appreciate that. And before I say Man Up Crusade, I'll say that manupcrusade.com. It's a nonprofit organization. Jeannie and I are just bringing awareness to the issue throughout the country, the epidemic of domestic violence. Go to the website, take a look, help when you can, schedule an event, and it doesn't cost you anything. You just do it and bringing awareness to the issue. And, from the presidency, I just happen to be the guy that God allowed to be in that position at that time. And it's such an honor that he allowed me to do that work for all of us. And I am blessed to go through that.
And I love that you said that, because I promise you, wherever you are is where God wants you to be. And if you're not going in the right direction, God wants you to be moving somewhere else. So, but thank you for everything. And make sure you support FAIR here, Federation for American Immigration Reform, at fairus.org. Help bringing great interviews like this together. So thanks for joining me on another episode of On the Border with Sheriff Lamb. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you, Sheriff Donahue.
God bless you.